All right, so again, welcome everybody. Today's session, as we said, is winterizing your ARM. We'll kind of jump around and cover a bunch of different features today, all tied to capturing settings and what you've been working on in ARM to be able to do the same thing next year, or to be able to have colleagues, others in your organization utilize the same techniques and standardize. So. Have a couple slides just to kind of organize our thoughts and our topics here. The first one, the first kind of tool we can utilize here is the migration package. The idea of this feature is to bundle up all of your options, all of your personal lists, or your favorites, we now call them, kind of really anything you've done within ARM since you first installed it on your computer, to tweak it and make it your own. And we try to save all those different files and options all into a real simple little package, a file that then in theory could be moved to a new computer. Is kind of the original use of it. Is okay, I'm done with this computer, I need to move to a new one, let's bring all that stuff with. But really, because of everything that it's grabbing and combining, it really can also make a really good rollback point. So just to be able to, all right, I've kind of made it through this year, package everything together, even though I'm not changing computers necessarily, it'd be a good way to just kind of bookmark where I'm at here at the end of a season, or really at any point in time in the year that might be convenient for you. Because again, it's just copying all of those settings and putting it into a file. So it's not, it's not affecting your ARM or anything like that. So that's kind of the idea here. Within our scenario is that it doesn't have to be only for a new computer. Let's maybe utilize that for either a rollback point. It's good as a backup if something were to suddenly happen to my computer. Then having this package be created, I can use that to kind of recover things, and it could also be a good way to share with a colleague. Maybe you have somebody new that's just getting started with ARM, and boy, they sure would like all of my lists, and as a nice starting point of what I've been doing for years in ARM or whatever. That can be a real great way to bundle up your options, your lists, as just a, hey, here's a starter pack to get you going, more or less. You could really do the same thing then. Just create the migration package and transfer that over, and have that other person load that package, and just replace all of the favorites list and things like that onto that other computer. So, just to cover kind of how to do that within ARM, under the Utilities menu, we have an option to migrate studies and settings to a new computer. So, although that, like I said, that's kind of the original use case was to bring everything across, it would be certainly useful in other scenarios. And kind of the first step here is to choose a location to save the package to. Typically an external drive works great if we're going to share this, pass this on. It wouldn't have to be, though, if we're kind of wanting to just stash this as a backup. But it'd be good for drop it on a network location or something like that. So that way it's somewhere else if something happens to this computer. So maybe I'm just going to throw it into a Dropbox folder. Maybe it looks like I've got a folder here. Doesn't matter a whole lot in my case. And it might warn you, it's noticing here that this is just on my local computer. It's on my C drive, although it is synced with Dropbox. So ARM's just kind of wanting to make sure I'm thinking about what path I chose. Is this a good location? And I'm going to say yes. It's local, but it's being synced to the cloud, so I know it'll be useful for me. I can access it somewhere else. Then the next option is just really asking us what components we want to migrate, or in our case, kind of just save and stash. By default, we always get the settings that come with, and you most typically want to also select this middle option, the personalization of study definition files. That really is all those files that you've saved. If it's like a report set, a view, a rule set, things like that, that you've configured in ARM and saved to use again, those are all, those types of files all are kind of bundled together here in this group. And this would also include all of your favorites lists as well. So typically you want to choose both of those. Obviously, in our use case, we would never choose study data files because we're not moving anywhere. We just kind of want to save those settings. So these first two is where you'd want to go. And it's just going to save it to that path I chose, and it'll actually create a backup folder for us. So I guess I can just go ahead and click OK just to see that it just takes a moment, grabs those different files from our installation and copies them into that separate folder. And it gives us some instructions. If we were moving to a new computer, we can kind of follow those along. But it was successful to build that file. So then, as we said, a couple of different use cases for that. We could take those files and maybe I'll actually open that folder up. Here on, sorry, I'm going off screen, and we just have this ARM backup folder, and there's two files. So these are all of my settings, and these are all those lists and SE files and things like that. So those two files here end up kind of making up that migration package that again we could send in an email to the colleague who wants to kind of start with my lists and things like that, or stash it somewhere, like we said, in case we have computer problems next year. And the last thing to mention, kind of in this same vein of preparing for the worst case scenario, is to utilize the ARM backup feature. And that is done here in the Tools menu, and then Options. There's a section for your file options, and specifically the second one is a backup. And so ARM can back up all of your files. It doesn't kind of systematically back up everything, but as you go and you're working in a file, when you press save, ARM then saves a previous version, kind of creates a file history of each of the files as you work on them. And that's really what we are creating when we choose a backup path here. And actually, even if you don't have a backup path listed, ARM is probably already doing that for you, that previous versions just in your documents folder. But a benefit is if you do select a path here to the backup, then in addition to the previous versions it's saving for your files, when you close down ARM each day, it'll create a migration package for us at that backup path. So another idea of making sure that we have the information, our lists, and all that work that we do within ARM saved out to a separate location in case something happens to our hard drive. So that's just another tool kind of in this same idea. Have ARM create that migration package as you're going. It really, in that case, it'd be mostly for throughout the season as you're working along to save yourself if something does happen to your computer, if that backup path is, again, somewhere else, not just on your hard drive, but either in the cloud, being synced in the cloud, or you have like an SD card, works good just to put into your computer and forget about it, and have ARM saving the backups there. That can be really helpful then if something goes wrong with your computer, you at least can kind of catch up with all of your settings and stuff from ARM by using that backup. All right. Well, the next feature we can talk about kind of ties in with one of the options we were looking at, talking about our personal list or our favorites. And really maybe expanding on that idea of, I've got someone else in my office that really could maybe use my expertise of all of the work I've been doing in my ARM. It'd be really nice if they could kind of catch up with me and maybe have that same list that they could look at. And so kind of coined this term. I don't know if it actually is a quote unquote feature in ARM, but I kind of like to refer to it as a validation list library. Really the idea of having multiple people in our group are all using ARM. Is there a way we can get each other all on the same page and share our favorites lists, make them standard, so everyone is really kind of working from the same lists, which can really be helpful in that standardization effort across a group. And so, we shared the one idea with the migration package. That's a really quick and easy way to basically copy the list that you have on one computer to another computer. Of course, then as you go through the season, then you might be adding things and making adjustments. Those aren't in sync necessarily because they're living on two different computers. So there is a way to you kind of grow that idea and actually set up syncing, so that way all of those lists and report sets and SEs, all of those things that people are creating actually are being synced across everyone in that group. And so really the idea is to, instead of just be working from your local computer with all of those files, we actually set up like a Dropbox folder or a OneDrive folder, something that's in the cloud that can then be synced continuously on everyone's computer. So that way, if I were to create a report set, this afternoon as I'm creating the final report, my colleague could then the next morning find that same report set because it will be synced across our Dropbox account or whatever service you might use. And so it's a pretty easy setup. It is something you'd want to contact GDM just to help you get set up. There's a couple of special files or things instructions we can send across to get everything lined up. But it usually is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of, all right, let's find a location. It could be just a network drive that everyone has access to. Some groups use like SharePoint. We just set up a synced folder on the SharePoint. And then as long as each computer has that folder as like a local path on their machine, ARM can connect up to that. And then we're really just redirecting ARM to look at that folder instead of your computer. So it's pretty easy to do that. Just a matter of kind of getting the instructions and making sure we do it all the same on each computer. And then, like I said, you're really all working from the same lists, the same files. If I have somebody create an SE, someone else in the group can almost immediately use it because of how fast typically those syncing services are. They just show up immediately on everyone's computer, which is really powerful, I think. One thing to note, sometimes when we have groups kind of start with that, they say, that sounds awesome, I really want to do that. But then as they think about their group, maybe we've got different people in different disciplines that would be kind of the master, because that's really the question that we start with. Well, who would be kind of the master, have the best set of lists that we would start with, because it really is going to replace everyone else's, or at least ARM would be pointed away from each individual's list and now to that common one. So you have to have a starting place. Who has the best list that we'd start with? And so if you have a lot of people, or at least several people that might be you know, kind of in that, in the running for the best list, you know, there we can kind of work with your group with instructions on, well, what would be the best way to maybe combine lists. We don't have just a tool in ARM where just click here, and it'll combine two lists, but it's fairly easy to copy paste. We usually say, let's just have everyone copy out their lists into like an Excel sheet and everyone have a separate tab and then kind of combine them together. But again, if you're in that boat, just contact us. It's a pretty straightforward workflow to get things combined, and then you really advance your group, I think, as far as just being able to be standard and working together within ARM by setting this up. So not a lot, I guess, to show there within ARM on that one, but definitely reach out if that sounds like something your group could benefit from. The next tool, I guess, just tying into the idea of kind of end of year summaries, or maybe when you brush off your ARM after a long break, would be looking at your study list. So when you open ARM the first time, if you aren't opening up a trial, or if you close a trial using the little X up here, you're brought back to your study list. We won't cover all of the features of the study list, but what this does is, as you're opening trials and protocols or creating them on your computer, ARM keeps a list of the different files. The nice thing is, it's really just a view. It's really just, you know, an indexed list of some particular files. So we can actually change, and we call it rebuild, this list to a specific set of folders, to a specific, projects that we care about. It's not going to affect where the trials are on our computer. It's not going to remove files that we've worked on. It's really just a view, a certain snapshot of different trials and protocols that we have. So your list might be long from however many years you've just been opening and creating files, but you can rebuild this list either in the corner. We have a rebuild button down here, or from the utilities menu, we can also rebuild study list. So this functionality is just to have ARM go out and look at the files on our computer, or on our network or something, and fill in this list. We can either add on. So down here, our rebuild method, you can keep your existing list and just go find more files that are out there at whatever path that we found. So maybe if it's protocol season and we know we've got colleagues that have been creating protocols out there that I need to go out and find, you could certainly update my existing list and find anything else that's new. Or we can drop out anything that we had in our list and start totally fresh. So an example maybe is that, well, we just finished last year's, now we're starting in on 2023 projects. So maybe I don't want to see all the 2022 files anymore. That we've moved on, and maybe I just want my list to be simple and short for the 2023 projects coming up. So I could clear my existing list to drop out anything that I have. And then up above here, we would just choose a path on our computer or wherever to find the files that we want. So for me, I'm going to browse here. I've got all the different files that we use in webinars. So maybe I'll go up to this high level folder that's got all of my individual projects in them. And then as long as you choose to search subfolders, it'll pull out all the files and all of those folders within that kind of high level folder. So if you have, if your company kind of sorts by year, maybe your top level is 2022. Now we're starting to put files in 2023, and then you've got, each company you work for within there. You can just browse out to your 2023 folder in order to pull any files that are in that folder, and in this case, drop out anything else that we don't find. And so you can see we're just kind of clear out our old list, and ARM's going to go out and find the files that we would need to put into this list. And if you haven't used the study list before, it's a great tool for searching and filtering. So ARM is opening up each of these trials and protocols that we found. It looks like there's 66 of them that were in that folder. And it's going to, it opens them just real quickly in memory to fill in all that different information in this table. That way it's easy to search. If we're looking for a certain type of file, what did we do in what have we done in the past with a certain treatment, certain product, you can filter based on treatment, or you can look and filter by discipline, and then what crop, or things like that. There's all sorts of information from each individual trial that gets put into this table, which makes it easy to search and find particular files. So moral of the story, this list is really great. It continues to be built as you're opening files, but you can always kind of pivot and direct ARM to where it should look. Whether you just kind of want to turn the page to a new year, or maybe going kind of the opposite direction. I need to dig up and find particular files that we've done before. What have we done with a certain pest or whatever. This can be a great way to look in your archives per se, and you can just rebuild your list to encompass all years if you want, and then filter down to find what you need. And then after making that mess, after making this huge list, when the next season starts, it's simple to clear out what you had built before and focus in on just this year's studies out in that folder. So that's the study list. The next one that we can use, I'm going to just open up, I don't think it really matters. I'm just going to open up a trial here, wanting to look at reporting. So if we go to File and Print Reports, let me see if I've got a slide on this one or not. Nope. Next one, looking at the print reports and specifically report sets. We did do, as kind of part of the statistics series a few weeks back, we talked a little bit about reporting in general. You're selecting, of course, your report components and generating a report from that. And what we can do when you make a report, you've configured all of these options on how the report should be created. You've chosen maybe multiple, maybe our trial summary, we have a few different components to really summarize our entire trial. Maybe I want my list of treatments first, and then we print out the site description, and then the summary report, whatever else we'd have at the end. So you have a bunch of different reports in a particular order. We've configured everything to look really nice. Then it's really to our advantage to save all of that configuration, so that way we can repeat it, whether it's repeating it later on repeating it next year or having a colleague repeat it. So everyone in our group is kind of creating the standard summaries. And so that functionality is a report set. Taking this list and actually saving the options, the configuration of it to a file. So we're this would be separate from actually saving your report with the information from this one trial in it, but instead we're just saving the options, the selections we made within ARM, so that in the future we can make those same selections kind of automatically. So when you have that report kind of configured the way you want, there's a button here to save set. And so we can save all these options that we've chose to what we call a report set. In my case, I would probably do something like, my final trial report, or maybe trial summary. Give it a name for what you're doing. What are you creating? Excuse me. So that way you remember what it's used for in the end, or maybe I put in my company if I'm planning to share this with others in my group to make it sound official. And by default, it's going to be saved onto my computer. It can be pretty easily moved to other computers as well with the migration package, if you'd like. We've talked about that earlier. This is a perfect example of those types of files that we can share through those other methods. Then there's just a description line, just more text if you want it to be more verbose about what this is. And it shows up when you go to load sets. So maybe this is the standard report for GDMs, trial summaries, or whatever we'd have. So this saves all of those options to a file. That's very easy to load. It actually shows up in this list of all of the different sets that I've either created before. We have some defaults that come with ARM as well. But for the different types of reports you might generate, mid-season, you maybe have the spray sheet that you usually generate. You can put that in a report set. Anytime you're generating reports, you can give that a name, so that way it's easy to come back to this same spot. Because, for example, if then we are working on a trial and I have to clear out my list, and we change and choose something else, have to change our options for whatever reason, it's very easy to come back to that spot we were at when we saved our set. We just have to load that set by choosing it from this list. So just simply clicking on that puts back all of our options just the way we had it when we created that set. So again, the idea being we've been generating reports. Things look really nice. Before we forget everything we were working on by leaving our ARM for a few months, let's save and capture all of that work, so that way next time around we don't have to manually do things again and try to remember what was it I did that made it look that nice. I can just load those options and it'll be exactly like it was before. Now, if you're thinking, great, that's a great idea, I wish I had known that earlier, there is actually a kind of a history of the report options that have been used in your ARM. So in this available sets section, there's a feature called previous sets. And if you click on that, it turns out every time that you press next and you generate a report, ARM is actually tracking and saving a report set kind of behind the scenes for us. Again, these are the report sets, so it's only the options. It's not actually saving the report that's generated, but the options that were used to create the report. Sometimes they might have a name. So if you loaded a report set, it remembers the name of that set. If you make changes, you can see here I kept making changes. So you get the little asterisk at the end. So it was a slightly different options each time as I worked on that report. If you didn't have any report set, there's no name there, but that doesn't mean it didn't still save that set. So this can be useful to basically go back in time and say, yeah, I wish I knew to create that set. I can go back in time and say, well, yeah, that last time I was creating that spray sheet, I'd really like to save those options. Well, I can go down and find the timestamp and the reports that were created. And if I choose that, it will just load that set, put the options right back the way they were. And this would be a great opportunity now to save this. Let's give this a name, put it out on my computer with a name to it. So that way it's a lot easier to find in the future. But you have that, again, that was your previous sets here will give you that history, and it'll just go back as far back as when you installed your ARM, really. So you can see it, I must have got a new computer, 2021. So you can tell it just keeps building the list. It's just tiny little files of just those options that you chose when a report was generated. Gives a nice history to recover and get back to a report you've generated before. All right. So that's a good way to cover some recover your reporting. The last topic, we won't really dive into all of the details for these particular features, but in the kind of following with our same idea here of the end of the year, trying to capture work that we've done to be able to standardize and to save time next year. Really, this would be a great time then to work with study rules and SEs, or standard evaluations. Really thinking if we're at the end of the season, we kind of have all the pain points are fresh in our mind of, boy, that was challenging. I had to go back to my CRO and ask this question 4 or 5 times. I had to keep asking for this certain information, or this wasn't put in right, or whatever kind of troubles that we had through the season. Really, that could be a study rule. There's a lot of functionality that you can implement to make sure that certain boxes are checked, things are entered in a certain way, or things are not changed. If I had information that we filled in a protocol that should never change, I can lock that information, or I can request that a certain field be filled in at this time of year. When I mark the trial as final, I need to have the GPS coordinates filled in. Things like that. That's really what study rules are there for. And so, as you've wrapped up a season, you've got all these headaches that you just finished dealing with. All of those really can create a perfect list of study rules that if you create and you can save that in a set, a list of rules that you set up. That way you can put them in all of your trials for next year and hopefully eliminate most of those headaches going forward. So at least if you're in a situation where the season's wrapping up, maybe you've got the time to learn and implement these. before next season, because Lord knows if you're in the middle of a season and putting out all these fires, you're not going to have time to stop and make a bunch of rules and implement these rule sets and learn all these other things. But if things have quieted down, this is a time to pick that up and put a little bit of time now to learn the feature, learn how it would work, and create some sets. Will save a lot more time next year, and especially when time's a lot more precious as things are going crazy. So the idea, we're not going to go through all of the features of each of these, and actually we have previous webinars you could check out. Or actually have a couple webinars this month on rules specifically that we'll cover in a lot more detail. But the idea simply being you can click through a trial and you say, well, you know what, I had 3 people I had to ask for GPS coordinates this year. You just simply have to, you can open up one of the trials or open up kind of a dummy empty trial that just gives you the view of the different fields that you can kind of talk through what were the pain points. I thought I right click, but it's not responding to me right now. But simply you would right click and there's the section at the bottom of your right click menu to add a rule. And I do not know what ARM is doing to me at the moment, but it is totally ignoring my mouse. That's working, it's just not ARM, okay. All right, I don't know what I did to poor ARM here. Let's just, I'm guessing there's probably a message up, but whenever I share my screen for a webinar, I've got a third monitor, so I never end up seeing the prompts quite right compared to if I was using my regular monitor. So let's just restart our ARM and try again. But kind of in this year-end review idea, we'll just open this trial again, whether it's a trial from this year or you just create a blank empty trial that you can kind of walk through. It's just a matter of stepping through. It's going to do the same thing to me, isn't it? Here, I'm just trying to right click and it's just freezing. So I don't know what I've got going on here. Other than I know I've got Windows updates waiting, and my computer usually stops listening to me if I don't run those updates right away. But the theory, if your ARM isn't being a pain for you, is to go through each screen, think about what am I asking people to fill in, or what information do we need to have at a certain point in time, and you can just right click on those fields and require them, and then you just choose the trial status that would go with that, and it's going to create rules, and it'll make a nice list for you, which you can then save to a rule set. That way you can use those in any files that you have. Next year, you can load that rule set into all of your protocols, which will then, those rules will all be in all of your trials. So now, hopefully, some of that chasing that you would need to do for the trial list will be less, because they'll have those rules and they can see those in ARM by validating. Or if you're a trialist and, oh yeah, I always forget to put that in, and then I have my sponsor ask me for that, you can create your own set, kind of that very same idea of, well, what do I usually forget, or what are things that I want to make sure that I fill in the way that I should. You can do the same thing, create a list, and it can be your list to make sure you fill things in the way you want. And when you receive a trial from a sponsor, you can just load that rule set in, even on top of any existing rules that the sponsor uses. They won't conflict with each other. ARM makes sure when you load yours in that it's not going to conflict with anything. And now you have your own checklist, basically, for yourself. Yeah, my ARM does not like me right now. I don't know why my right click is just not working. well, we'll move on, and I'll have to play around with that later. I don't know why. Again, we won't cover, I guess we can't cover anyway because it's not behaving itself, but we won't go through the details. We'll get to talk a lot about study rules here in the future webinars. Really the same principle applies. I'm just going to pick a different trial just in case there's something weird in that one. The same idea applies. Instead of fields in the site description or things like that we want to require, if we think about the assessment data section and the assessments that we're doing, we can really do something similar, creating a set of the descriptions that we use for the assessments that we take. And that's really what an SE file is, or a standard evaluation, is just saving one or more columns, not of the data itself, but just the description of how do we describe the actions we took, the rating that we did, and saving that information into a file that again we can use again and again. And so that workflow, yeah, I can't right click. I don't know why my ARM is not happy. I was going to right click again. Quickest way in the assessment section would be to right click and export an SE. But I guess we'll just have to leave that leave that alone because my right click is just not working. But anyway, yeah, you can check out again on our YouTube channel. We've got some previous webinars on SEs, talking through how you can set those up. I think we do have ones previously on rules, or you can join us in a couple weeks to see. And we'll talk about using study rules, the different types we have, and how you can kind of make use of them. But again, the goal being to save that information, and we can use it again next year. Oh, it is still frozen, so I'm not sure what's with that. Well, at any rate, that really is all of the topics I wanted to cover. Could have spent more time if my right click would have worked, but that's okay. Hopefully that gives some ideas at least for you to package up, save all that work you've put into, so you can use it again without having to reinvent the wheel. Got a few minutes to spare if there are any questions. Normally I just talk all the way through the hour and then regret not having more time. So we've got a little time here. But if not, appreciate you guys joining us today. And give you all a little time back in your day since we wrapped up early. All right, well, thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.